sent by Verso to meet Raphael Samuel because it was a freelance job and basically Raphael needed some editorial help. To cut a long story short, Raphael Samuel was an eminent British Marxist historian rated alongside E.P. Thompson and Eric Hobsbawm as one of the most significant historians of the left of our time. And when I met him, I had no idea because he was so modest, he was so unassuming. He just told me, he had a manuscript that he needed help with, and I sort of believed him. It was a sequel to the East End Underworld. As soon as I arrived with my manual typewriter to talk to Raphael about the sequel to this book, I knew he wasn't going to let me do anything. I'd been warned, but I just didn't believe them. It was because as soon as I opened my mouth, really, he virtually got out his tape recorder and started to interview me about my family history and my understanding of crime in East London. His account that we live history and that popular memory has an important role to play in understanding the past really did change my life. I can see this now only in retrospect. This is because Raphael's approach to history, the radical methodology at looking at working class lives, really did give me a different way of looking at myself and also where I'm from. Raphael Samuel's oral history of the East End Underworld, The Life and Times of Arthur Harding, was already published, as you can see. And the sequel that he never delivered was going to contain these episodic accounts of many criminals. And so when he started talking to me and we got chatting, and I told him my dad had a nightclub in St. Newington in '61, he was thrilled. Okay, let me explain. My dad had a nightclub in '61. The club was taken over by the Cray twins. Here's a picture of my mum and dad. Sorry, Mum. And the club was taken over by Johnny Barry. Guess my dad was made an offer he couldn't refuse. And even though my dad wasn't around that much during my childhood, he died in '68, Raphael was still hopeful for some reason, because I had these strong links in East London and probably because of my accent, that I could get interviews with people he couldn't, who'd actually been to the club. And he didn't really want to interview criminals. He just wanted to interview ordinary people who happened to be there at the time to understand the myths that they sort of perceived. And so through Raphael's eyes, I learned to understand why the stories people tell themselves, the myths their families live with and pass on are significant, particularly crime mythologies. So Raphael's influence led me to move away from feminist theory and postmodernist accounts of consumer society to looking at female crime mythologies. I persuaded Raphael to be my PhD supervisor along with Judith Williamson and Barry Curtis. And it was through these tutorials and later taking down the life story of a professional thief that I developed an understanding of what I now call the criminal gaze.